Cup playoffs. I spent Sunday in the nation's capital with the cherry blossoms, but not after spending 3 days embedded in with my football team. This guy did the same thing up in Pittsburgh country, but don't tell anyone. He's not one of them. He's kind of sort of one of us as an Orioles fan and a Caps guy, but also you're Redskins, Will Graves, right? So that was your upbringing was on the wrong side of the football track. But hey.
I'm sorry, I was too busy celebrating Super Bowls in my childhood. Is that a crime?
Man, you got your David Akers working, man. You know, I mean, you're running.
Been a long, but I haven't been a child for a long time. That's part of the problem.
Well, you know, this is a wild week all the way around for those of us who cover sports, especially in places like Cleveland. They got a basketball team in the finals or in Game 6 and Game 7 in the middle of all this as well. It's been very, very active, and the one thing for the NFL, and you know this from a baseball perspective in your town, and clearly at 8-20 and playing in the middle of the night in Anaheim this week, we feel it here. There's a bit of hope involved with football in your community and mine, and in a lot of communities that feels kind of eternal. It feels like the Steelers and the Ravens are incapable of being the Browns and being 2-14. You know?
Yeah, I think I can't. You know, I've been here in Pittsburgh now 7 years, and you know they look. They're not betting 1,000 in the draft. Nobody bets 1,000 in the draft. But, you know, when you look at what happens in Cleveland, it's just like they're betting 1,000 in terms of getting it wrong. I mean, they just seem almost incapable of getting out of their own way, you know, and like they're perpetually overthinking themselves. So, and you know, I had a buddy that was in the sea of Browns fans watching the draft on Thursday night, and he was videoing this, and you see the reactions after they picked Mayfield, and then when they didn't take Chubb with the 4th pick, and people are just like losing their minds, and that's just that's what the Browns do. And the Steelers, you know, they pick, you know, a safety, Terrell Edmonds in the 1st round, and people go, oh, okay. I mean, it's a little curious because I thought we needed a linebacker, but there weren't any good linebackers left, so okay, whatever. It's very interesting, that dichotomy there between sort of the competent members of the AFC North and the not-so-competent members of the AFC North.
Well, I don't think anybody in Pittsburgh's real concerned about what's going on around the division, but certainly from the Ravens' perspective, Will, to see how – you talk about the difference between the Cleveland Browns and the Ravens over 20 years is that Ozzy's made every pick. And on a night when Ozzy kind of wanted to spike the ball and on a weekend when he wanted to spike the ball, he used the draft as a playground to deal back, and winds up with 12 bodies, not 7, winds up with the franchise quarterback that sort of slipped through the cracks in the 1st round and only gave away 2 twos to do it, really, or 2 next year, really kind of sort of the move up to be able to do it. It really is interesting because the Steelers, it never changes there. Even when Colbert's all caught up with the Penguins and really into hockey, which I know he is, they wind up every year drafting real football players that get into their system, onto the field, and give them a chance to not just win 10, 11, or 12 games, but a chance to win a Super Bowl every year. And that standard's pretty high.
It is, and, you know, people, it's so funny how, and I'm sure it's the same way for Ozzy in Baltimore, you know, people are quick to harp on the top, you know, the 1st through 3rd round picks that don't work out, the Jarvis Joneses of the world, for example, forgetting that when you look at the Steelers, you know, they had Pro Bowlers last year, you know, Villanueva, who the fan vote obviously influenced that, but this is a guy that did 3 tours in Afghanistan, tried to be a defensive end for the Eagles. They signed him as a practice squad player, and now he's a franchise left tackle. Antonio Brown was a 6th round pick. I mean, and he's a Hall of Famer. So it's funny to me how the people get so mad. It doesn't really, I mean, it's not the player's fault that they're drafted where they're drafted, and if it doesn't work out, you know, I mean, like I consider, like with the Steelers, Darius Hayward-Bay. Love this guy. Love him. One of my favorite guys in the locker room. However, because he was fast, and Al Davis took him way higher than he should have, that sort of follows him around. He's a competent NFL football player. It's not his fault that Al Davis said, I'm going to take you with the 7th pick, and I'm going to give you the money that goes with that. What's he supposed to do? So,
10 years later, he's still in the league, right?
And he's developed a role at the Steelers as sort of like their special teams ace, great locker room guy, great room for that guy in that receivers group because he's older than Antonio. I think he's a couple years older than Antonio, and because he's taken what I would consider to be, I mean, there aren't a lot of Antonio Browns in the world, right? But there are a lot of Darius Hayward-Bays, guys that just sort of grind it out, very professional, and a mature guy that young guys can come to. Because AB is not that guy. AB is not a guy that's going to sit there and pull Juju Smith-Schuster aside and go, this is how I do this, 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 and this. He's not going to do that. He says, watch me, but he's not going to sit down, and they're not going to spend a lot of time. Darius Hayward-Bay will be that guy. So it's a valuable guy, and the Steelers have a lot of those guys.
Well, you know what I say about Darius Hayward-Bay? He a Terp.
He is a Terp. But he's, just a great, one of my favorites. I, as a reporter, I like guys that don't want to just talk about football, and I like guys that are okay with talking about broader things in general. Some players don't do that. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't do that. Antonio doesn't do that. But Darius, look, I've got a job, and it's not just, hey, what happened last Sunday and what's going to happen next Sunday. I mean, that's not my job. It's part of it, but not all of it. So I love guys like DHB, and Steelers lost a good one in Arthur Moats, too, who's a free agent and probably not going to get picked up. He'll be great on TV. He'll be making a lot of money on NFL Network in a couple of years, I imagine. So, but anyway, an interesting draft for the Steelers. Everybody in the world that writes about the Steelers assumed that they were going to get an inside linebacker. You have Ryan Shazier, and obviously what a great moment to see him walk onto the stage in Dallas, 4-ish months removed from spinal stabilization surgery. It's interesting. He's inspirational. He's been a great guy in the locker room, but, he's not going to play football again. I think it's great that he wants to play football again. I think it's great that that's his goal to play football again. But it's really, really hard. I believe in him, as you like to say. That's his hashtag, Shaleep. I believe in his ability and his willpower, but I just think when you see him walking, and even as awesome as that was, it's hard to imagine any doctor in the league watching that and then saying, okay, strap on a football helmet and go hit guys. It's just hard, right? So the Steelers have to think, well, how are we going to replace him? Well, there wasn't a Ryan Shazier in the draft. There aren't a lot of Ryan Shaziers walking around, period, right? So, they wanted Rashaan Evans. They wanted a kid from Boise State. The guys, they weren't there. It was reported that they tried to trade up. They rarely ever do that. So they didn't. And then they decided they got Terrell Edmonds from Virginia Tech, who's a bigger safety type, and he'll play in the box in their specialty packages. So he's sort of like Shazier light. But then they went, second, third round. They got James Washington, the kid out of Oklahoma State, then got his quarterback, Mason Rudolph. And that was the one, how it is. You just saw it. When you have a franchise quarterback and you draft a quarterback pretty high in the draft, everybody goes, oh. And trust me, a lot of people in Pittsburgh are going, oh.
Yeah, even at 76, right? Like we had that around here with Chris Redman. And but Joe Flacco's never had that. And Ben, when's the last time they drafted a quarterback around there that I've heard of?
The last time they drafted a quarterback before the fourth round was Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay.
You go through the laundry list of guys they've had. Landry Jones, fourth rounder. Josh Dobbs, fourth rounder. Dennis Dixon was a fourth rounder before him. They just
see some of these names do pop up because I remember them all playing, but I remember more about Charlie Batch, and I remind Charlie of that every time I see him. That he was the guy I remember. You know,
so,
and touchdown Tommy Maddox. I remember him back in the day.
Well, what's interesting? It was a minor trade in terms of position. They went up 3 spots to get in front of the Bengals in the third round to get Rudolph. And, when Kevin Colbert was talking about their evaluation of Rudolph, they had him graded in the neighborhood that the 5 guys that went in the first round, including Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, I really like and should be, if they get weapons around him, can be a very, very effective quarterback, provided they can protect him early in his career.
So you are betting on him throwing a touchdown pass in Heinz Field at some point during his career. You believe that will happen?
It might be this season.
There you go. All right. I'm letting people take the plank as far as they want to go out on betting against Joe Flacco. I'm letting everyone do it because I think Flacco's going to have a good year. Call me crazy, but I think
there's back injuries, though. It's just. It's one that you cannot get hit. He could do it. It's. How many times think about golf, right? Think about how great Fred Couples is, and then every time Fred would be on a hot streak, and then he'd be like, "Oh, my back's acting up," and he's out a month. I sort of equate it to that. You never know when your back's going to be a problem. My wife has had, she had back surgery 4 years ago, and she still is a little achy. So that's why I think it's just hard. It's hard for Joe's a tough guy, he's a good quarterback, Super Bowl winner, but I just think if you're Ozzie, you have to protect the future. And I think Lamar is a guy that, is going to be a pretty good pro.
He is with the Associated Press in Pittsburgh. You can read his work out at WNST.net. He is Will Graves, AP, out on Twitter. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're using that Royal Farms app when you're gassing up. You'll wind up getting your fried chicken, your Western fries for free. Also brought to you by Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland. They also sponsor our Be More Positive community and charity series, heard each and every Thursday morning here, as well as with Cole Roofing. And we're going to hear from Billy Cole and Cole Roofing and Pfister Energy at some point this week about the backside of the draft. You can find Will Graves at Will Graves AP on Twitter. I just want to throw a little bit of hockey in, then we can go back to how bad our baseball teams stink and football and anything else you want. But this is 7 games, right, Will? I mean, I don't think don't make any plans next Monday. Don't make any plans next Wednesday. It's fun hockey, right? Like, aside from the fact that the Caps lose, and you're more of a Caps fan than a Penguins fan, more on my side of this, even though covering stuff up there, this is great energy. The games are great. They're worth the time. They're worth the money. They're worth circling Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday on your calendar. This is as good as it gets. And Ovechkin and Crosby playing at an incredibly high level still, both of them.
Yeah, no, that last point is certainly the case. Ovechkin has been really, really good since the playoffs started. I mean, I would say, and obviously when you've never made it past the second round in your career, you're talking about a smallish sample size, but I would say this is probably as good as he has played in the playoffs during his career. That being said, to me it's compelling theater because if you're a Capitals fan or even if you're a Capitals player, aren't you always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop? I mean, that's just – I mean, they played really well in Game 1, and they were bad for 5 minutes and lost. They were good in Game 2. They weren't necessarily the better team over the second 2 periods, but when you get a 3-0 lead and you got a pretty good goalie, that's usually enough. They got a little help. The replay on the Hornquist non-goal was sort of Jesse James versus the Patriots catch-esque. The difference there is Jesse James' pass was, at the time, the way the rules were interpreted, the pass was incomplete. I mean, it's a terrible rule, but they followed the rule, so it wasn't a catch. That Hornquist thing, man, that's a tough one, but that's the NHL for you. I think it's a compelling series. The Penguins aren't as good as they were last year or the year before, but then again, neither are the Caps. Matt Murray's glove has been suspect. Caps went there 3 times yesterday and scored, so that's something if I'm the Penguins I got to worry about. Brian Dumoulin, their defenseman, took a shot from Tom Wilson, and
Oshie's hand at the end of Game 2. I mean, we're starting to see attrition
right, exactly.
here.
This is, I mean, Game 3 last year was when Matt Niskanen sort of turned and look, I got my stick up and they're sitting Crosby's head, and oh my gosh, I just cross-checked him in the head. A former teammate, by the way, of Sid when he was with the Penguins. So I think we're sort of due for something really stupid to happen during a game. It'll probably happen.
Well, the puck almost crossing the line,
and that's what there'll be some. I would say this: do you think there's any point in time if there's a play that has to be made to decide this series, who's going to make that play? If you're a Capital fan, how can you have any faith other than, well, we're just sort of due for it to be us?
I'm putting $1 on Brett Connolly. Okay, that'll be my guy. You're going to spin the wheel.
I mean, they have no history of beating these guys. They don't. I wrote something on the eve of the series. I looked back at all previous 10, and I was having PTSD from my teenage and college years in the 90s, where they would get up 3-1 or 3-2 in the series, and then Mario would go, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll start playing now." And the Peter Nedved game, which is, I mean, I have emotional scar tissue that's never going to go away.
Well, it felt good to go whoop, 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 whoop every time Larry Murphy got the puck. It didn't feel good every year he'd come back and show his ring off,
No, it's, are the Caps good enough to beat the Penguins? Yes. And in fact, they've had some success in Pittsburgh during this season. Heck, they won the division title in April by beating them pretty soundly. They won twice last year in Pittsburgh in the playoffs, including Game 6 when the Penguins had a chance to close them out. But then what happened? They went home, and they couldn't get a shot by Fleury, and the season was over. So it's just a tough – I mean, you can make every rational, compelling, intelligent – you can talk about Corsi and user, all that sabermetric stuff that the hockey guys like to use, but I mean, sometimes it comes down to juju, and the Penguins have had the juju over the Capitals for 25 years. So and I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. People say, do you care? You know what I care about? I got a kid that thinks he's going to be in the major leagues one day. He's playing baseball, and I don't want any games to conflict with my kid's games. You know, so right now I'm hoping my kid's got a game the night of Game 6. So I'm hoping that whoever wins on Tuesday night, or whoever wins Game 3, just win the rest of the series, so I can watch my kid, and coach my kid playing baseball.
Has your kid become a Pirates fan through all this? I mean, Pirates off to a good start, right? I mean, against all odds, they were selling off, they were giving up, and they were throwing the towel in, and it hadn't worked out. Kid almost threw a no-hitter the other day. Yeah,
my son is I would always call him like a fan of the future. He's a front runner. Okay, he's a front runner. If your team is good, he likes you, and if your team is bad, he doesn't.
A front runner growing up in Pittsburgh, that's perfect.
The irony of this is he's not a Steeler fan. Like, he just is not
good.
I mean, he doesn't dislike the Steelers, but he doesn't really care. He's just sort of ambivalent. And same with the Penguins, but the Pirates are the ones that he's sort of, because he plays baseball, as the ones he's sort of glommed onto. I mean, if he's excited for their start. I think a lot of people are, they have 17 wins by the end of April. I think not most people, but some thought they wouldn't have 17 wins by the end of May.
We had 20 losses by the time the Ravens made their first pick.
I mean, so they're not. I mean, the Pirates might not be bad. I mean, it's the Corey Dickerson, who after McCutchen, they traded McCutchen to the Giants. They acquired Dickerson from Tampa Bay. He's pretty good. He's a pretty good player. Colin Moran, who they got in the Garrett Cole trade to Houston, and is a starting everyday third baseman for the first time in his career. I mean, he's a little raw, but he's pretty good. Pitching staff's been pretty good. I mean, so it's all the ifs that they have needed to go right for them for the first month of the season have gone right. Now, is that sustainable? Tough to say, but I think they're not going to be a 100-loss team, which is the way it sort of emotionally felt after you trade away, the two cornerstones of your franchise. So that being said, the crowds have not been great. The weather's been bad, but the crowds also have not. I wouldn't say the city is still really skeptical. I think there's a lot of hurt feelings going on in terms of just the wake of having McCutchen and Cole dealt, guys that were productive and popular.
Yeah, wait till Buck and Adam Jones and Machado are out of here, and John Boy's running the franchise here, and Brady Anderson's picking the players. And I mean, that's where this boat's going, dude. It's like the Titanic sinking, and everybody's in the water with their cell phones taking videos of it. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, and this has happened in Cleveland too. Even when they were pretty competitive under Buck, they still weren't drawing, right? And I think this Pirate team could sort of, I think this is sort of where we're at. I think that people are like, you know what? I don't want to put money in the owner's pockets. He's getting the TV money. I'm not going to pay money for my ticket. I'm not going to go and spend $8 on a beer and $5 on nachos. I think people are sort of fed up because they felt they were promised when the team got into serious contention 13 through 15 that they would double down and reinvest some of the money that they made when they were averaging 28,000 fans a game. They haven't really done that. And people are smart enough now where they're just like, you know what? It has nothing to do with the players. I mean, they support the players, but they're just sort of fed up with management. So I think they'd have to be in first place in the middle of August, I think, before they would, actually have a legit shot at getting embraced by this community.
All right, man. Well, we'll be doubling down on all things Caps and staying up into the middle of the night. I mean, I went to Game 2 on Sunday. I said, if I'm at the game, it's going to go triple overtime or something like that. But it did not turn out to be the case. Enjoy the hockey this week. Enjoy the winning baseball, and phooey on the football team up in Pittsburgh. But we always feel that way around here.
Of course.
Will, appreciate you, man. We'll see you soon.
I do. Bye.
Will Graves, one of my favorites from the Associated Press. You can follow his journey at Will Graves AP, as well as out at WNST.net, where he does tons of stuff from Pittsburgh. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Don't forget, as well, our morning newspaper ships in there at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com, where it's still $10 a month, and we have the Laurel entries for the weekend, including the Kentucky Derby. My wife and I are going to put on the nines and get down there, and I might even put a Derby hat on. We'll be at Laurel. I'm going to drink Black-Eyed Susans I'll have a mint julep too. Why not? Mix and match. 2 weeks away from the Preakness around here. We'll be telling you all about that and the Black-Eyed Susan, as well as the Pink Festival, and getting you ready for the bands, the Bottomless Cup, and the running of the Preakness Stakes out at Old Hilltop. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget, as well, if there's any breaking news, you're going to get that first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis is here on Thursday from 3 until 5. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.